My concern is, again, and it's probably the third time I've talked about this, but the sustained attack on Twitter when the ownership there changed and the platform was committed to not taking down speech, not taking down posts, allowing the sharing of information, and not censoring information. And we just had a major decision last week from a court in Louisiana, a federal court in Louisiana, where they said the government was in fact pressuring big tech companies to censor, and big tech companies were willing to go along with it. Now we have a change there, and you're going after the one company that's changed how they're doing things. That's what concerns me, particularly in light of the fact that you just wrote about this a few years ago, saying this is what goes on.
In today's House Judiciary Committee hearing, Jim Jordan engaged FTC Chair Lina Khan in a dialogue regarding her stance on Twitter and the handling of disinformation. Notably, Mr. Jordan emphasized the importance of data privacy. He echoed bipartisan concerns about the indiscriminate collection of data, particularly highlighting the issue of the FBI's purchase of such data. Ms. Khan reiterated the paramount nature of privacy rights and acknowledged bipartisan support for addressing data privacy concerns. When pressed by Mr. Jordan about a past statement regarding Twitter and disinformation, Ms. Khan gives a surprising answer.
I thank the chairman. Ms. Khan, thanks for coming here to testify before the committee. Would you commit to me to provide all updates necessary with respect to the Live Golf PGA Tour merger and your all's looking into whatever is occurring with that?
So, Congressman, I believe it's our partners at the Justice Department that are looking at that.
The FTC is also having some look into what's going on there, to what at least the news accounts I see. But I would just appreciate any updates from your office about that and the concerns about it. And I'm going to yield the balance of my time to the chairman.
Thank the gentleman for yielding. Ms. Khan, earlier, and I believe the gentleman from Arizona brought this up, you said people's privacy is paramount. I couldn't agree more. And as we talked earlier, I do think there's bipartisan support to deal with that, this sweeping up of data that happens, and scarier yet is FBI purchasing that data. So that is of paramount importance. But I would say the First Amendment's of paramount importance too. Would you agree?
Absolutely.
And then the gentleman from California, Mr. McClintock, asked you, what's disinformation? And you said you don't really have an opinion on that. Is that a fair assessment of your answer?
As part of our job at the FTC, we're focused on deception and fraud and that sort of thing.
Digital businesses such as Twitter disserve their users by facilitating the spread of disinformation. Who decides what's disinformation?
Jordan's concern intensified as he noted the federal court's recent ruling in Louisiana, affirming that the government was indeed pressuring tech giants to censor content, with big tech companies compliant. He emphasized Twitter's shift towards free expression and questioned why the FTC was targeting the one company that had changed its approach. Lina Khan emphasized FTC's focus on ensuring legal compliance and addressing economic power in speech platforms. Jordan questioned disinformation standards and the government's role in regulation. Khan emphasized the importance of promoting competition to mitigate censorship concerns.
My concern is, again, and it's probably the third time I've talked about this, but the sustained attack on Twitter when the ownership there changed and the platform was committed to not taking down speech, not taking down posts, allowing the sharing of information, and not censoring information. And we just had a major decision last week from a court in Louisiana, a federal court in Louisiana, where they said the government was in fact pressuring big tech companies to censor, and big tech companies were willing to go along with it. Now we have a change there, and you're going after the one company that's changed how they're doing things. I want to know about disinformation and who decides what's disinformation. You think the government should decide that?
Congressman, the way I see it is concentrations of economic power, including over speech platforms and communications platform, that it's that concentrated power and the ability to pick who gets heard, who doesn't get heard, to make these types of decisions. Congressman, at the FTC, our job is to promote competition. More competition means more people making these decisions, and I think that can alleviate some of the concerns about censorship that you're sharing.
Why are you harassing them?
Twitter has a history of lax security and privacy policies.
You've asked for every single communication relating to Elon Musk, not communications that he just sent to someone or some communications he received, but any time he's mentioned. That actually seems more than harassment. That seems like almost an obsession. Why such an intense focus?
So, Congressman, again, it was found that Twitter's lax privacy policies allowed unauthorized users to co-opt Twitter accounts, including that of Fox News. Subsequently, Twitter voluntarily entered into a consent order with the FTC.
Here's what you wrote in December. Madam Chair, here's what you wrote in December. Identify all journalists and other members of the media to whom Twitter has granted access since Musk bought the company. You want to know the name of every journalist a private company has talked to? Think that's consistent with the First Amendment?
Congressman, as a former journalist, I take extremely seriously the valuable work that they do and understand that there can be instances in which government action is unjustifiably
Particularly, Madam Chair, if I could just interject, particularly in the context here. I mean, it's bad enough if you got government asking a private company about who are the journalists you're talking to, you name 4 of them and say, we want the other names of any journalists you may in fact be communicating with. That's bad enough. And I think a threat to the First Amendment, freedom of the press. But in the context of giving us information about how government had suppressed speech on these platforms, that's the context you're asking for. I think that's particularly troubling, don't you?
Congressman, the consent decree that we have prohibits Twitter from sharing personal information with third parties. When we read in the papers, like everybody else, that Twitter may have granted access to third parties, that's what our teams were seeking information about. Again, this is a company whose history with the FTC goes
Madam
back
Chair,
a decade.
we got limited time. Madam Chair, who is David Roque?
Could you repeat that, Congressman?
David Roque, R-O-Q-U-E. Who is David Roque?
I'm not familiar with
You
that.
deposed him last month, June 21st, 2023. David Roque is the independent partner for Ernst & Young's independent assessment of Twitter's program. That's part of this consent decree. Do you know what Mr. Roque said in that deposition?
I'm not aware.
Okay, let me read it for you then, because I think it's pretty important. Mr. Roque testified, again, one of your lawyers, you deposed him, testified that FTC's conduct made him feel as if the FTC was trying to influence the outcome of the engagement before it had started. He said, in some of the discussions that we were having with the Federal Trade Commission, expectations were being conveyed about what those results should be before we had even begun any procedures. So they're the independent assessor in this consent decree the FTC has with Twitter, and you're telling the guy who is the person. He's the guy. He's Joe the accountant who's going to get this information. You're telling him, you're putting your finger on the scale, telling him what you want the outcome to be, and he's supposed to be the independent fact finder. Why are you doing that?
Congressman, I'm not familiar with those.
It's because it was just filed today, but we are. This is filed in court today, and this is your deposition.
I'm happy to take a closer look at it and be back in touch. I will say, as a general matter, we want to make sure that the assessors and auditors that are responsible for overseeing compliance are doing their job.
You say Mr. Roque's line, what he testified here, what's been filed in court today, that there were suggestions of what they would expect the outcome to be, they being the FTC, there were suggestions of what they wanted him to go find in his independent assessment of the consent decree agreement between the FTC and Twitter.
Again, I'm happy to take a close look and we can be back in touch with you about that allegation, but our staff are consummate professionals. When they conduct these investigations, they're focused on determining
Did you go after,
whether there
did
was
you
a
go after,
violation.
is your attack on Twitter, harassment on Twitter, is that based on the fact that all kinds of Democrats have asked you to do this, and frankly, some things that you've written about dealing with, quote, disinformation? Does that have anything to do with it, Ms. Khan?
Jim Jordan interrogated Lina Khan regarding the agency's interactions with Twitter, alleging that the FTC's requests amounted to harassment. Khan defended the FTC's actions, citing Twitter's history of lax security and privacy policies. Jordan further expressed apprehension over the FTC's inquiries into journalists and its alleged meddling in an independent evaluation of Twitter. Khan reiterated the FTC's commitment to upholding privacy standards and journalistic integrity, asserting that the agency's actions were within its mandate to enforce regulatory compliance. Jim Jordan accused the FTC of harassing Twitter with numerous demands, including interfering in an independent assessment. Lina Khan defended the agency's actions, emphasizing the need for regulatory compliance, especially regarding Twitter's history of privacy issues. She denied political influence, stating that the FTC makes independent determinations.